Welcome back to another episode of the podcast From the Depths of Darkness to the Light of Success. I am your host, Chris Swick, and on this podcast, we talk about addictions, mental health, recovery, ADHD, anything anyone's afraid to talk about. We talk about it on this show, and I believe everyone's story is valuable at the end of the day. It does not matter what walk of life you come from. You're all welcome on my platform. We're here to share a story, bring light around things that people are afraid to talk about, and end the stigma around all these things. With no further ado, I'd love to introduce to you my next guest. I got Sarah, the host of the Sober Gratitude podcast, coming from the USA. If you would like to introduce yourself and tell them a little bit about you, and we can go from there.
Great. Thanks, Chris. I'm so happy to be here. I know I had to reschedule a couple times, so I'm so glad that we're finally here today. I was looking forward to it. Yes, I'm from the United States, the East Coast. I'm a Jersey girl, born and raised in Jersey. And now I'm raising my kids here in New Jersey with my husband. So it's great.
And that's amazing too. And sorry, you've been sober how long?
Not a little over 9.
Nice. And so did you ever hit rock bottom? And if so, what did yours look like? Everyone's bottom's different, but we all have the same story sort of thing of how we got here and the struggles we have. We're all the same in that way. But what was your bottom like?
I did hit rock bottom. I hit rock bottom because of a dream that I had when I was 39 years old. And I was dreaming that I was being submerged into a big vat of liquid. And I woke up like I was holding my breath in my dream because I was being drowned in the dream. And I woke up like gasping for air. And I lay there like completely hungover, completely baffled by the dream. Like it was a very long dream, but that was the end. That was the end destination to the dream. And there is an episode on my podcast where I just tell the dream. It's very raw and vulnerable. It's called My Rock Bottom Dream. And so you get all the dirty details. There's a lot of details in it that I'll just let people go to my podcast to listen to it. But I woke up. It was like something had changed. I felt different. There was something in my mind. I just felt different. I finally believed that I was slowly killing myself. Like I was drowning myself in alcohol. And how much, like you can't get more literal than that kind of dream. And fortunately, like I was able to really pay attention to it and think about it and not just push it aside and be consumed with how I was having a hangover, which I was. That was the way my life was for like the last 18 months of my active addiction. And I woke up after that dream and I thought, what am I doing to myself? What am I doing to my kids? What am I doing to my husband, my family? What am I doing to myself? And that was the morning a new thought popped into my head. And it was a thought like of letting go. It was a letting go thought, basically. And the thought, it was just like a sentence. It said, and I did not think of it. I did not think up myself. Google local recovery meetings. That's what popped into my head. So I Googled local. Just the thought of that, I was like, okay. It was like this surrendering, like, I don't have to fight this anymore. Like I just can't figure it out because this is after 2.5-decade love affair with alcohol. And so I was so grateful that my thinking changed, that I was finally just like letting go of control. And I went to that meeting that night and I was scared as all hell, but I was met with such love and compassion. And I was told to not to compare myself to the stories I would hear, but to identify, to like basically listen to what other alcoholics were feeling. And that's what I did. I didn't listen to the person who said that they accidentally killed somebody, because I didn't accidentally kill somebody, but I listened to the feelings surrounding what that person was experiencing in active addiction and then how they felt after they got into recovery. And I realized at that moment, I'm like, I'm home. This is where I need to be. And since then, I had two one-day relapses, and then the last drunk I had was August 19th, 2012. That was my second day relapse, and it was when I almost lost my family. And August 20th then became the first day of sobriety. It was the last time the 19th was the last day of hell. And I haven't looked back since.
And that's
Well, I
amazing.
do. I sometimes look back like I have to, but
You gotta remember where you come from, for sure.
oh yeah.
And then so what does sobriety look like for you today?
Oh gosh. I've been relieved of the obsession to drink. I consider, and this is like controversial, but I consider myself a recovered alcoholic, although I do firmly believe that I will never graduate from being an alcoholic. I'm always going to be an alcoholic, but I have a design for living, and I trust in my higher power that if I stay connected to God, my understanding that, and grow along spiritual lines and live in my higher power's will, not my own will, because my own will just got me drunk. And if I step aside and let God call the shots and I trust in God's will for me, then my life is just really much more peaceful and calm. I'm not afraid. I have, I did, I'm not a representative of AA, or I'm not here promoting AA, because I know there's a lot of different forms of recovery that work for everyone. And I just think sobriety, if I'll promote anything, it's sobriety. But for me, AA worked like, cause I tried so many of other things up until the age of 39. And so today because I did the 12 steps of AA and because I had a profound psychic change, I my experience in the world is very different than it was before I did the 12 steps. And I'm a different person in terms of how I treat people. Like I don't proclaim to be perfect. I'm not a perfect person by any means. I'm human. I was made human and I'm infallible. Like which one is it? Infallible. I make mistakes. And
Hey, everyone makes mistakes, we aren't perfect.
you're right. Exactly. And so it's such a relief now to know, okay, like God made me as imperfect. Like I don't have to do things perfectly, but I definitely like to live life as authentically as possible. And that means thinking of others and how I might be impacting others with my attitudes and behaviors. Because everyone has such a huge impact on other people, the way they behave and act. And for me, like I am driven by the desire to help other people have a better experience with me than they did in the past. Because I, my way of living was very spiritually sick before I did the 12 steps. And that looked like full of self pity. I kept myself in the victim role. Uh, a lot of self loathing, perfectionist. And full of fear. So I wouldn't try new things because I was afraid of success and failure. But it's taken some time. I've been patient with myself in growing to the place that I am now. And I know that I'll never graduate like I said before, I'll never not be an alcoholic. But I know today that obsession to, to drink in response to anything in life. I don't use the word trigger because like for me, just having my eyes open, I would wake up and I'd want to drink. And that's something that has been removed. But in order to keep that obsession removed, I do have a design for living that I need to follow. I need to work with other people. I need to bring other people through the steps. I need to think other centered, not self centeredly, and go to bed with the goal of not needing to make amends with anyone. But if I do get to the end of the day and I'm like, wow, you know what? I said that thing to my husband a little bit with an attitude, not too nice. I get that I get the opportunity to go to my husband and say, you know what, I just need to follow up with you in that conversation we had. That wasn't nice of me to say that. And I ask for his forgiveness. I apologize, ask for his, and it's just such a nice way to live because I don't get stuck in like my own rationalization. Like, oh, he deserved to get that attitude from me, or like he did this. So of course I'm gonna have a piss ass attitude and behaviors towards him. But I don't I get to live differently today. And it's a miracle. It's a blessing. It's one of the many gifts of sobriety, and I don't wanna go back to the chaos and the unmanageability of active alcoholism and early sobriety when I had not yet done the 12 steps.
Yeah, and I wanna go back, rewind a little bit. I love how you said you're a recovered alcoholic. I don't even like saying I'm an addict or I'm a recovered addict anymore because it just brings back because I'm really not that person anymore either. So I don't like, labeling myself as that over time. I've really begun to not even label myself that, but share my story about what's worked for me and what's helped me along the way and stuff like that. And that's one of the things that not to, you know programs and everything have helped others and stuff like that. It did help me too, but I just don't like labeling myself as an addict or an alcoholic or anything because that's not who Chris is today, or that's not who you are today. But you're way past that stage in life, you know what I mean? I don't even like to talk about those things in life because that's not who I am today. I like to be of service and help others today. And that's why I've created this platform and stuff like that, but I like that you touched upon that. So you're a recovered alcoholic instead of just I'm an alcoholic because you're not anymore.
And I used to call before doing the 12 steps, I'd say I'm an alcoholic in recovery. I'm a recovering alcoholic. And I think there's is confusion about those two words, and people like I remember I used to be like when I'd hear people in meetings say I'm a recovered alcoholic. Oh, who do they think they are? I'm recovering. I'm so humble because I'm recovering, and I always know that I'm going to, need to work on myself. I still believe that. I am still willing. I am still very open to recognizing where I've messed up, where I need to improve things in my life. That's a part of the recovering. But in terms of the recovered state, like I literally, like before doing the 12 steps, I thought I'd always be cursed with alcoholism, that I'd always be the kind of from one degree to the next, depending how my day was, be white knuckling it or smooth sailing. That I literally, for 8 years, my first 8 years in recovery, when I had not done the 12 steps out of the big book, I had done it out of a different literature and not completely through. And that's not my sponsor's fault. It's just the way it happened. But I used to have like shitty days, and I would be like, I'd feel sorry for myself and I'd feel really annoyed that I was an alcoholic and I wanted to pick up. But I didn't. But it would be like a struggle. And that's why in my platform, I say sobriety doesn't have to be a struggle. Like recovery does not have to be hard. We don't have to be battling alcohol. We don't have to be battling our thinking, like what our thoughts are. And so just to go back, so when I would have bad days and I used to think if I could only drink just one glass of wine just to take the edge off, so take a break for myself. I wish I could do that, but oh, I'm an alcoholic. I can't. I know this is better than what it was like I can't go back to what it was like before. But now today, like if something if there's something that's disturbing to me or something that's upsetting that could be potentially upsetting, or I just don't go there anymore. I'll feel myself. I'm like, oh, I could go there, but I'm not, because how is that going to solve? Like, how is that going to be useful? So now, because I did the 12 steps the right way out of the big book, and I had an acute understanding of exactly what my character defects were, now, like I can work on my human condition. I can see that when I'm in fear, I know I'm in fear, and I'll tell my husband, I'm like, I'm feeling afraid right now. Or if I'm feeling any self-doubt, like I know that I can talk about it. And I never think I wish I could drink. I don't think I just it's an absolute miracle, and I never believed it could work for me, but it has. And it happened through the course of the pandemic. I had the opportunity to do the 12 steps exactly as they're laid out in the big book, exactly the right way. And I was brought through them fast. And I had an incredible experience. And I just want other people to feel the same way too. And some people don't need to do this. Everyone has their own way of getting sober and staying sober. This is the way I can stay sober. I have a new design for living, and it's much more peaceful. It's easier. I'm not in collision with people. I shut my mouth more when my children want to say something, my husband wants to say something, I'm not interrupting. I'm giving people space. I'm thinking about if somebody comes to me with a problem, I'm thinking about how would I want to be treated? What, I put myself in people's shoes basically. And
Mm.
that's my goal every day, is to just think about how I'm being useful and how I can stay out of self every day, basically. Because my life was saved like countless times in addiction and in sobriety. And it was saved not because of my own will. It was because I trusted, I had faith, and it's hard to explain because the experience has been so divine for me. And anything that's divine in terms of experience, it's like very hard to articulate. So sometimes I feel really like inarticulate when I'm trying to explain my experience now in sobriety. 2 years ago, if you were to interview me, I was in a very different place. And I still would feel self pity. I would still feel like really severe self pity. And I didn't have any way to get out of it. I didn't know how to get out of that feeling.
But it sounds today, especially with starting your podcast, with doing the work that you've needed to do over time, over the last couple of years and stuff like that, you've really blossomed and grown as a woman, as a human being as well. And you can see it in you articulating your story today. And it's a beautiful feeling. And
It's an easier, softer way of living. It's just much more comfortable. And it would be wonderful if the whole world could receive the gift of sobriety, and the best kind of sobriety possible, where it's not just putting down the drink. It's also digging deep, going to the depths of every aspect of your life and your mind and spirit and psychologically, emotionally, everything. I didn't get this way just because I did the 12 steps. Like I had to do a lot of other work with trauma related work. And I spent a lot of money on therapists where I just complained about certain people all the time. And then the therapist would co-sign my bullshit. And doing the 12 steps, I didn't do, it wasn't an experience where the people who were helping me to go through the experience were saying, yeah, like, it's okay that you were an asshole to that person. Like, it's okay because that person really harmed you. And today, it's not my way of, my goal every day really is to just be kind. And again, I'm not perfect. I have days where I get frustrated, but again, I have a solution. There is a solution to not just the drinking problem, the thinking, the spiritual problem. And I can't believe this is my life today. And I want to like sing it from the rooftops all the time, but I can't do that all the time. But I have, when I'm so excited to be on people's podcasts where I can share my experience, and also to have my own podcast where I can share as well and have guests on who are having incredible experiences in sobriety. And so I love sober podcasts. I love recovery podcasts. I think it's such a wonderful way for people who don't know where to go. That's one option. There's a lot of options. But that's one wonderful option these days.
So let's talk a little bit about that podcast. What drove you to start your own podcast, Sober Gratitudes podcast? And tell everyone where they can find it, where they can find you on social media and stuff like that.
Like, if in my Instagram account, there's a link, and you always have that option to put like if you have a website, and I have a Linktree account that it pulls you right to my website and where I'm on Twitter now. And then also it has a list of all the different podcasting platforms where my podcast can be found. If you follow podcasts on Anchor, you can click Anchor. If it's Apple, you click the Apple button and brings you to my podcast. And I don't have I didn't do it to make money. I did it because I felt like it was before I did the 12 steps. And I felt that there was something, I felt like there was this itch I needed to scratch. I felt like I was seeking something and I didn't know what I was seeking, but I kept being told, and it wasn't like I didn't learn anything in the 8 years that I was sober going into recovery meetings. There was a lot that I did learn. I changed a lot from listening to people and to reading all literature, but the big book I kept. There was something about it before COVID. I'm like, I want to learn more about it. Like, why have I not gone to, I just felt restless. This was like this restlessness I was feeling. And I had been on social media, but not as a person in recovery. I was more focused on the fact that I have children. I have 3 sons, 2 of whom have autism. So I was really connecting with the autistic community and, parents of autistic children. And so I was on a podcast with a woman who has its adventures in autism. And so I was on her podcast as well. And she said, and I mentioned my sobriety. It was the first time I ever said anything about being in recovery. And I mentioned it. I think this was like 5 years ago. It was a long time ago. And next week I'm interviewing with her again, just as like a follow-up, because I've changed a lot. My kids have changed a lot. Things are very different now. And so wanting to give hope to the community of people who are touched by autism, are impacted by it. And so that's how I came onto the scene, the social media scene. And so when I was on I was on a couple different podcasts, like I told you before we were recording. And so the one, Adventures in Autism, Megan Carranza, she's the host. And she said to me, she said, I think you would be a great voice in the podcasting world for recovery. And I'm like, no. So for a year or so, yeah, I'm like, what, are you kidding? I have no idea. Like, what is even podcasting? Like, how does this work? And so that planted a seed, is because I was wanting to do something more creative with my life as well. And I do talking, I do listening. And so I just kept thinking about it. And I talked to a friend of mine who he's in recovery, and he's actually the director of a podcasting portion of a news station here in New York. And I was on I went into New York City and I was on that podcast. And it was about autism. And he said to me, you should start a podcast. He said that to me as well. And I'm like, okay, like maybe, like, I keep hearing this. Maybe
Everyone
give
keeps
it give
telling
it a
me
try.
to do this.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm like, okay, this is a chance for me to be like completely authentic. That was my original handle, was unexpectedly authentic. Because when you get sober and you've really become some people, like for me, I was experienced like growing into my authentic self and having confidence in like who I am, like not doubting myself. That's when that whole like relationship with myself and liking myself better started. And so I decided one morning, I was in the shower, and that's when a lot of like ideas that are not my own pop into my head. And the word sober gratitude just popped up in my head. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's my podcast. So
Perfect. Roll
I
with it.
started on Anchor. Yeah. And I told the guy who in New York City who knows a lot about podcasting, I'd been texting him different ideas, and he was like, no. And then sober gratitudes popped into my head, and he said, that's it right there. And it's like such a nice umbrella, because it doesn't keep me from, like, I can talk about anything, like any type
100%.
of addiction. And that's what I've done. And from the time I started it until now, like I have changed so much, but I can still use this platform to share about my journey and share about like other people's journey and with different addictions and things of that nature. And so I love doing it. It's a nice creative outlet. Like I'm not looking to make money from it. I guess it's like somebody who likes to do art and gets
It's
a
a
lot of
passion project
feel.
of yours, a lifelong passion project.
Yep. And it's also, I feel like my life ministry in a way, because I feel like this is God's handiwork. Like again, like it all popped into my head. It did not, it was, where I take credit is that I listened to my intuition, which I feel like is really God trying to communicate with me, and trust my intuition. And then when I do that, most likely things are better. Things work out on a positive note when I trust my intuition. Sometimes I fuck up, but oh, sorry. But most of the time, like I'm learning more and more to trust my intuition. And there's times I'm like, should this podcast continue? And then all of a sudden I get an influx of people saying in one kind of category. So it's like I get served on a silver platter, like focus on this. And like last summer I did Mondays with Mackenzie, she's somebody that I'm very close with in person in real life. And that was a fun way to do the podcast this summer. And yeah, so I'm just going to continue it because it's something that I know can possibly help somebody every day. If there's somebody who listens to an episode and if it plants a seed for them, then great. If it's somebody who listens to it and they're like, I want to get sober, like it's time, and they do great, like wonderful. So I just let it go as I let it grow organically, and I'm just feel really proud of it. It's something I never used to be able to start something and continue with it for a period of time. And I'm coming up, I think on January 1st will be my 3 years. Yeah, or no, yeah, because I started January 1st of 2020.
That's amazing. Congratulations, and that's an amazing milestone in itself. And everyone
Thanks.
out there that's listening to this episode, go check out Sober Gratitudes podcast over on Instagram. Go over to Apple Podcasts, leave her a 5-star review, write her up a little nice blurb, and let her know how you like the show and what you gather from it and what you gained from it. Because there's so many insightful tips on any podcast I listen to. Sometimes I like listening to comedy. I listen to so many genres of podcast, and that's my go-to thing even when I'm working out at the gym. I love podcasts or talk radio in my ear, just learning, or sometimes I'll listen to an audiobook. I'm not a huge audiobook person. I rather read the physical book personally. But yeah, go check out Sober Gratitudes podcast, everyone. Sarah's an amazing individual. She's on Instagram. They're very active in the recovery community and beyond. And she's also, a beautiful mother of 2 autistic boys. I want to touch a little bit on that. What are some of the challenges you face being a mom to 2 autistic children?
I have 3 sons. One is 18. He's neurotypical, and my middle son, he's very high functioning. He's what some would consider today, it's not like in the DVM anymore, but Asperger's, more like an Asperger's type. But he's not really like, he's on the spectrum. It's either you're on the spectrum or you're not. And then my youngest son, Cameron, he's more impacted with autism, and he needs to go to a private school to address his severe language-based learning disorders. You ask, what are the challenges today? I can't really say that my life is challenging. Like it just, these are my children.
Yeah.
I, they're now 13, 16, and 18, almost 14, 16, 18. And my husband and I know them inside and out, but we're still learning about them as they grow and evolve. But when they were younger and I was still actively drinking, and I had 3 under the age of 4, and I was noticing that there was something different with my second son, like with his language development. And I was concerned. And so those days, like those early days, like I was just full of fear. So my life was more challenging. I didn't have a design for living back then. So I think I was a pretty good mom, considering the fact that I was so like still like alcohol was something that was a big part of my life. It was my crutch. It was the way that I could like give myself a break if things were stressful during the day. Obviously, over time, that just ended up like it turned against me because the progression of the disease. I just needed more to get the same effect, and it was just not working. So that's where the challenges came in. It was like I was making the way that my disease was progressing and my how I my attitudes and behaviors and how that was changing. I was just falling into a deep, dark hole. And I couldn't be the mom that I really wanted to be. I always felt like I wanted to be a better mom to these kids, but I did a pretty good, like I said, I have to say, I don't want to beat myself up. Like I fought for them. If anything, like cared, I loved them so much more than I loved myself. But it was hard because I also have a chronic illness which impacts my hearing. So I'm almost I have very poor hearing. I wear hearing aids because of this condition, and the symptoms of the condition are very debilitating. So I was also like trying to be a parent as like a spiritually sick human whose alcoholism was progressing, who was really uncomfortable and so exhausted from this autoimmune disease that I have, and then also trying very hard to be the best kind of mother I can be. And I did when I got sober, they were still little. Then my recent post is that I have on Instagram is like I have a picture of them when I got sober. It was 2012 and they were so little. They were just like these little guys. And it was after my second son had been diagnosed with autism. So it was really not too long after he was diagnosed with autism that I like hit my rock bottom. And I'm so grateful I did then because today, like they're teenagers. And during the course of the time that I got sober and today, like they have grown up, like they've experienced adolescence, like so much they've gone through, like bullying, anxiety, things, coping skills of their own. And I was learning how to cope with things as well. So what I was learning was helpful because I applied it to my real life. Like I applied it to how I was raising my children and my relationship with my husband and being like a parents who we were like aligned in how we were raising our children. So I guess the short answer to your question, what challenges me regarding being a parent to autistic children? Nothing really. Like we think about my husband and I talk about things that we know we need to talk about. Oh, what like we need to set up a special financial account for our youngest son who may be living with us the rest of our lives, but we don't know that for sure, but just in case. So I feel like we're adulting really well together in response to the different needs of our children. And because my children they don't remember me as far as I know, like I have not been told they don't remember me ever being drunk, and they've never seen like my husband and I come home from like a rough day at work or something and that I need to have a drink, or that they don't see like a refrigerator stocked with alcohol like it was before I got sober, and then have access to that. And so because of that, they have witnessed my husband going through times that, yeah, are difficult, but good times, and like just learning how to cope with things in a way that are healthier, like not picking up because my 12-year-old son lost the baseball tournament. There's this one example that I love to give. It was like this window where I could tell him that how proud I was of him for choosing a healthy way of responding to the fact that he lost this baseball tournament that he wanted so much to win. And he was upset. He was crying and he was like a little boy still. And I was only a couple years sober, and there was like this carnival that night in our town that he was going to go to with his friends. And he's like, I don't even want to go to the carnival. I just want to go home. And I'm like, okay. And I'm thinking like, okay, like he needs to cry. I'm going to let him cry. I'm not going to try to stop him from crying. And I said, I just identified with his feelings. And I said, this really sucks. I'm so sorry, honey. I know how much you wanted it. Whatever you need, I'm here. Like, if you need to stay home, that's fine. You can just let your friends know that you're not going to go. And then in an hour after he got home, took a shower, he's, you know what, mom? I think I'm going to go to that carnival because I think if I'm with my friends, I'm going to feel a lot better. And I was like, oh, here's my window. I'm like, I'm so proud of you. I said, you know what? Like in my head, I'm like, you decided not to do drugs and alcohol in response to something that was really upsetting. You chose to like do something healthy. Of course, that's in my head. That's what I want to say to him, but I didn't. I just said, you know what? I'm so proud of you for getting to a place of wanting to feel better and choosing a healthy way to feel better emotionally. And you can hang out with your buddies and laugh and go on roller coasters or play games. And that was like 7 years ago. And now he's 18. And so I had 7 years of all these opportunities where I could reinforce his actions, like things that he decides with. That's a healthy response, honey. Like that, I'm so proud of you. And I'm more present. Like I don't get afraid when there's something that comes up that's upsetting for any of my kids because that's just life.
100%. And you can also, it's good to instill those good things in your children as well, because they will mirror what they see of you too. You know what I mean? And I can see it in my children. My bad actions from over the years are slowly starting to come out, but you can correct them if you start instilling the good things and the healthy habits in their lives. And that's what, I'm trying to do today as well. Giving it a good effort, coming up 2 years clean and sober this week, actually. So this is just another milestone. It's just another year. Like that's all it is to me. But I know I will not pick up if I lay my head down at night clean and I wake up sober. I just have that driving me today. Like there's no need to go back out to that lifestyle because I have way too much to lose today from my house, my family, my fiance. There will be no marriage. There will be none of that if I go back out and use again. And I know that sits heavy on the back of my head. I won't have my children in my life again. And there's no need for that. I won't have a job. I won't have money in my bank account. I know that. So I just gotta try and instill these healthy habits, like, even when my kids get money for their birthday, I try to tell them, "Let's put it in the bank account, save it."
Yeah.
We don't need to go spend it on stupid stuff all
Right.
the time.
Right. Maybe all of
A
it.
little bit, but, no, but you gotta try and instill it younger, I feel, in children today, like, about the saving, how important your finances are later on in life, because 'cause you're the one that needs to take care of you later on in life. No one else is
Yeah.
here to take care of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, like that's such a gift in sobriety, like that you can, that's what you're thinking about. You're not thinking about drinking. You're thinking about like how I can help my kids learn about money. And that it's alcohol like just got in the way. It was always in the way. And I didn't realize how much it was in the way because that's all I thought about. If I wasn't drinking, I was thinking about when I would drink again. And so that was like the central part of my life. So like how can I be present and useful to these children who didn't ask to be born? Like my husband and I, we willingly made that choice to have children, not expecting what we got. What again, like alcohol was not the solution to like having three children close in age and two with special needs. Like alcohol doesn't help the situation. It's just a distraction from how I can be like a stable, loving, unconditionally loving parent who's present and focused on my children's lives and listen to them, not have that alcohol calling my name every day anymore. It's just such a blessing. And so we get to be better parents. We get to think like the one thing about being an alcoholic I know is that I was an active alcoholic is being stuck in my head. And even as an alcoholic in recovery, getting stuck in my head. And that is a distraction in itself to everything. And so we get to learn how to try our best to think of somebody else aside from just this one person. Because there's like almost 8 billion people in the world. All I have to do is just not think of one of them and that's me. If I'm thinking of me all the time, I'm not going to be able to teach my children about finances or reinforce good behaviors, good coping behaviors that they're showing me, or teaching them good coping behaviors. Or I don't know. It's just, sobriety is the best thing in the world. And for me, it's been, I used to say, I wish I got sober earlier, but I didn't. And that's okay because
You
I'm
got
here now.
sober when you did, and it's
Yeah.
been working great since.
And so now, like in terms of like how, like people that I'm still recovering, like I won't call myself, I'm still growing in that. Like I finally have, because I've been a food addict. And so I'm finally at a place, a healthy place with my eating. And like I had a heart scare this summer and this past summer, and it was enough to, okay, I need to make a drastic change with how I eat, like what I put into my body and how I move my body. Cause I was like, and COVID didn't help because I was like, it was like lethargy and ice cream, like sitting and Zooming and having like lots of fun on Zoom meetings and in recovery meetings. But like the motivation like was gone to like exercise or eat. And so and I'm going to be 49 next week. And I can say, oh my gosh, I think I'm like getting closer to being like the best version of myself. But I know that will take like a lifetime, right? Like that will,
Exactly. We'll
so
never be that best version, but if you can work and be 1% better than you were the day before, that's
yeah.
all you can ask for. You know, if
Oh,
you can
totally.
help one person, be kind, compassionate, loving, but don't be the opposite, which is angry, negative, those types of things. It's okay to have negativity in your life, but you gotta know which, avenue to go down with it as well.
Yeah.
You can either choose to be in that negativity or choose to be out of it.
Yeah.
So what's
A-
one piece of advice you could give to anyone out there struggling today, Sarah?
Anyone out there struggling with like active addiction or,
Anything really, or just
okay.
anything in life.
What has worked for me, because there's a lot of different things that I have struggled with in my life that I didn't even touch on because it's just not really relevant, not really important. I would say accept help. It's one thing to ask for help and have somebody say, yes, I will give you help. But it's another thing, and you have to taking that next step and saying, I accept that help. I accept your help and be willing to do things a little bit differently so that you can feel better. Because I know for me, like, I just wanted to feel better. And when I accepted and I was shown a different way of living, when I had tools of recovery laid at my feet that I was willing to take those steps and to now practice those steps every day of my life, that willingness to do things that are different and trust the person that's helping you, then it's accepting help is really, I think, is a powerful way to move in a direction where you can feel better. I know for me, that's what happened. Is like the more I accept help with something that's baffling to me, that's something that's like not working for me, that's something that's uncomfortable for me, something not even myself, my children, like accepting help with, oh, I need to add this therapy for my one of my sons, or I need to, to have and then listening and accepting the suggestions, listening to them, not necessarily like if somebody suggests to me like, okay, in order to get sober, you have to strip naked and run around like the block 3 times. I think I'd be like, I don't think I'm comfortable with that. But if they say, if you want to get sober and feel better, just try this. Show up at a meeting, call somebody every day, and offer to listen to their problems. Try to find a way to get out of yourself. Okay, I think I could do that. I think I can do that. I'll do that. I'll do that. That's something I'll try. And trust your gut, because my gut told me for a long time that I liked alcohol way more than the next person. And I knew I probably shouldn't continue drinking, but I just didn't know any other way to cope with life or to celebrate life. I just didn't think it was possible to live life without drinking, but it is. It's so much better. So accepting help, I think that's probably, I always make my answers very long. So you can cut it and
No worries.
slice
No,
it
no,
up
that
for the
that
point.
that was a great answer. I like it. Learning to accept help. It's not you can't always do things on your own is what I'm getting from that too, what you said. Learn to accept help from others when it's being offered. It's so true. If someone's offering to help you or if someone wants to help you, just accept that help. Sometimes it's for the best too. But I
Yeah.
appreciate you today coming on the show, and sharing everything, sharing your story, sharing your insights, Sarah. Everyone, please go check out Sarah over on Instagram at Sober Gratitudes Podcast. Go check her podcast. No, Apple, Spotify, wherever you can find your podcast. It sounds like it's there. And before we go, though, anyone listening today too, go over to my page, go over to Apple Podcasts, Apple Music, Apple iTunes, wherever, Spotify. Hit the follow button. Over on Apple, it'd be great if you could leave a 5-star review. And also, all podcasts are up on YouTube, and they're slowly coming up on there too. So go hit the subscribe button over on YouTube, From the Depths of Darkness to the Light of Success. But thank you again for coming on the show today, Sarah, and sharing your story. It was greatly appreciated.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor. Thank you.
I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
You